welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda and today I'm going to be chatting through all the books that I read in the month of March. So I'm trying to style my bangs more because they're finally long enough to where I kind of want to wear them. So apologies if they look ridiculous. I'm really trying to learn how to style them. But my hair seriously is so resistant to any sort of styling that I really don't know if this looks good or not. So we're just gonna roll with it. Also, first time filming a sit-down video with glasses, so hopefully they're not too annoying, but I kind of need them to see. With that out of the way, let's talk about books. So we're gonna go in order of when I read these books, and I read a lot. I read 15 books in the month of March, 17 if you count DNFs, which I will mention as we go. So let's get going. First up is The Name of All Things by Jen Loynes. This is book 2 in the Ruin of Kings series, and I'm buddy reading this series with a bunch of people in the Discord that I'm a part of, and I quite enjoyed this one, although it was not as good as the first one. So in this one, we're following the events directly after book 1, which was such an explosive ending. And what made me not love this one as much is that I didn't love the way this story was being told. So we follow main character Kieran again, but he's in a new location and he's meeting up with some people who I don't think he exactly knows until he starts talking to them. But basically, this book takes place in like 2 days, but we're going back the entire time in flashbacks to learn more about these characters that Kieran has met. And while I found their story very interesting and I really enjoyed learning about it, I did not like going back that much. Like, the whole book was basically just flashbacks, which I don't love that. Like, I don't mind the occasional flashback here or there, but like the whole book was flashbacks, and we really weren't with Kieran. We were with these other characters that he was hanging out with at this tavern for the entirety of these 2 days, and I really just didn't like that writing style for me personally. So I think I gave this one a 4-star rating. I still really enjoyed it and will definitely continue with the series, but I just think the storytelling in the way that it was done was just not my favorite personally. Next up is another buddy read book, and that is The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. This is the gorgeous Evernight subscription edition, and I was really excited about this one because I have previously really loved Crystal Sutherland's books, and this one was a tad disappointing for me. But in this one, we follow 3 different perspectives, and we follow Jude Wolfe, who is super rich and is tethered to a demon. And we follow Zara, who has been tracking these murders because there's 5 women who have just been murdered and there's no fingerprints, there's no DNA. So Zara's trying to figure it out. And then there's a 3rd character who gets introduced, and they're all trying to figure out what's going on. And I think this book was trying a little too hard to make us connect with all these different characters. So we were bouncing between all these different perspectives, and it just felt like it was trying a little too hard to get me to like these characters. And I feel like I didn't really get the opportunity to know them because there wasn't enough time to do that. So there's just too many character names for me personally for such a short book. And I did like the writing style, and of course I love the witchy sapphic themes that Crystal Sutherland seems to write really well. And I did like it enough. I gave it 3 stars. I would definitely read more by this author. I just don't think this one is my favorite that I've read of hers. Next up is The Predator by Rue Nix, which is my in-person book club pick for February. And I did not like this one very much. I just found our main character incredibly annoying. And for this book being like a mafia romance, I found it very hard to believe that our main character was in such danger. And apparently she's like the mafia leader's daughter, and she was such an idiot. Like, she would make the dumbest decisions. I'm like, what? How did we get here? So I found it really hard to believe that she was like this hardcore mafia girly. Like, it was really hard to believe. And then she was like trembling all the time too, which I brought up at book club. I'm like, this girl is a chihuahua. She will not stop trembling. It's so annoying. And our love interest, I just found him hard to believe. He just leaned against everything. I think he had a balance problem or something because the guy could not stand up straight. And he just drove me crazy. They both were very annoying and they loved to stare into each other's eyes. Just staring, no words, just staring a lot. So that was not comfortable to read. And I don't know, it was a goofy, weird time. It honestly read more of a comedy to me than it did mafia hardcore romance. So, if you want a little giggle, maybe read The Predator, because I thought it was hilarious, but I really don't think it was trying to be. The next book is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is my first book that I've read by this author and thoroughly enjoyed it. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, but I truly just fell for these characters and I'm so excited to read more by this author. So in this book, we follow our main character and of course, you know me, I don't remember names, but she breaks down on the side of the road trying to avoid hitting a raccoon, and this guy pulls over to help her. He gets her car out of the ditch. They both go their separate ways, but they both end up at the same bar, and so they start chatting. They go home. It's a one-night stand kind of deal. She sprints out of there before he wakes up and goes back home, and so they really miss each other, but like they don't want to admit it, and at least our female main character doesn't want to admit it, and so they live very different worlds. So our female main character lives in the big city. I forget what she does, but she has like a really important job, I think. And then our male main character runs a farm, B&B kind of thing. And so their worlds collide and they try to make things work, and it's just so good. So I just truly enjoyed this one, and the audiobook was absolutely incredible for this one as well. I love that there was dual narrations. There was a goat that was adorable, and I just would really recommend. I think it was really fun and I had a great time reading it. Next up is Killjoy by Holly Jackson. I believe I read this in a 24-hour readathon or something. Like I could have sworn I read this just to get something read quickly. I don't know. But all these books are read for Realmathon, I should have mentioned. So hopefully Team Blood did pretty good. I don't know. I still haven't seen anything come out yet on how we did, but I think we did pretty dang good. But anyway, so this is a super short little novella that is actually set before the events of the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. And I liked this one a fair bit. I think it was fun having finished the series to kind of go back to the beginning of things and read this. So we follow main character Pip, and her friends are going to this murder mystery party. And it's one of those ones where you have to like dress up and you all get assigned parts and somebody's the murderer. And it's really fun. I've been to something similar a couple years ago. It was really fun. So it was just fun and fast, and I give it 3 stars. It was just a good, quick little read. Next up is a book that I thoroughly loved and was supposed to buddy read with Sarah in the Discord that I'm a part of, and I just like devoured this book so quickly. I felt so bad for just racing ahead. But that book is The Final Strife by Sarah El-Arifi. I love this so much. I'm starting to think this author may be an auto-buy author for me, because I read Feybound last month and I read this month, and I'm obsessed with her writing and her characters and her worlds. So in this world, people have different colored blood, and based on the color of your blood is how you are basically treated in this world. So people with red blood are elite, blue blood is of the poor, of workers in resistance, and clear is of the slaves and the invisible. So clear, if you have clear blood, they actually cut out your tongue and chop off your hands. It's a very brutal world. And so we follow our main character, Scylla, and she dreams of seeing the revolution come to life and take down the Reds. And then we also have another perspective of Anor, who is the daughter of the like main leader of this world. And there's this competition coming up in which the Red Bloods compete to see who's going to be like the next disciple, basically. And it's so good. I love me a trial. I love competition-based fantasy books. So this one is absolutely amazing. There is a bit of a sapphic romance in this, which I also loved so much. And I am very eager to get to book 2, and I'm gonna save it to later in the year when it gets a little closer to book 3 coming out. But I would highly recommend this one. I think it is so well written, and it was so hard to put down. Like when I was reading this, I didn't want to stop reading it, which is a great feeling. And I gave this one 4 stars, but honestly, I think I might want to bump it to a 5 because I truly just love this one and I'm still thinking about it. That ending, was wild. Next up is a DNF that I'm quickly gonna mention, and that is Must Love Books. I started this and then realized that everyone was pitching this as a romance, when it certainly is not. It's just a literary fiction book, and I'm like, absolutely not. Like, that's really not my jam. So I DNF'd it, which I'm sad about, but I've realized that all of the books that this author has written are all just literary books set in the publishing world. I want romance, like a romance set in the publishing world, but that's not what she writes, unfortunately. So I DNF'd this because I was expecting a romance and it just wasn't what I wanted. Next up is a new all-time favorite book of mine. I cannot stop thinking about this book, and that is Blood Mercy by Viola Roth. I am obsessed with this book. Leo and Cassia are just perfection. So this book is a fantasy romance book, but it has a really good magic system and really beautiful world building. So it's not just straight romance. It really does have a good fantasy foundation as well. So in this book, we follow Cassia. She is the bastard daughter of the king, so she doesn't have too many prospects for her life because she is the bastard daughter. And then we follow Leo, who is a vampire, and they call them something else in this world, and I'm now not remembering what they're called. Oh golly, seriously can't remember. It's a tragedy. But anyways, so they are coming to the kingdom of the human world basically to just make some oaths and do political machinations and things, and Cassie wants to learn more about these vampires, and so she is like sneaking out and talking to Leo, and they form a relationship, and it just goes from there, and it's so good. I just loved this book so much, and the moments between Cassia and Leo were just beautiful, and Leo is just the cinnamon roll of cinnamon rolls. He's just adorable and sweet and so considerate, and I'm obsessed with him. So highly recommend this. I gave it an easy 5 stars, and I am itching to get to book 2, hoping to read a book a month until I catch up, but I'm obsessed. It's so good. It's so good. And next up, I got DNF surrounding my favorite books of the month, which is sad, but the other DNF I have for March is Booked on a Feeling. I have read another book by this author and did not like it at all, so I really just don't think she's the author for me. This one is really bothering me with how the male main character was talking to our female protagonist. He was like, don't eat sugar, you gotta watch what you eat, you better lose some weight, and like, don't eat that, and my blood was boiling, because if my partner ever said any of that to me, it's like, you're out of here. You are out of here. It's like, I did not appreciate how he talked to her, and he was pushing her to exercise all the time, and it just made me so mad. He was just very irksome to me, and I didn't see how that relationship was gonna last for very long at all. It was very toxic to me, so DNF'd it, hated it, and would highly recommend not reading it. Next up is one I'm very sad to talk about because I just didn't love it, which is really sad, and that is A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. I read this as part of the book club on Steph's Patreon, and I was really looking forward to this one because I really enjoyed other books by this author, but this one I just really didn't connect with the characters very much. So in this one, we follow our main character who has this tea shop, but it also at night is a haunt for vampires to come, and they have a heist. Honestly, this book is very forgettable to me too. Like, I don't even remember why they had a heist. Like, what were they doing? Like, I really don't know. So yeah, it's very forgettable. Like, I can't even remember that many details about it, which I'm very sad about. So I ended up giving this one 2 stars. I may reread it in the future to maybe see if reading it again at a different time might be better, but it was fine, but not amazing, sadly. Next up is a book that I totally picked up on a whim, but also because I saw a book club on Fable reading it, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds really good. And that is House of Crimson Hearts by Ruby Road. This is the first book in a new series by this author, and it's a very steamy lesbian fantasy romance with vampires. That sold me immediately. I'm like, yeah, sign me up. So in this book, we follow our main character who is a vampire hunter. I think she's a vampire hunter. Let me look at my notes. Yes, she is. So she's a vampire hunter, and she goes to this academy to basically learn how to defend themselves against vampires. And then we also follow our other main character. I think Octavia is her name. Started with an O. I remember that. And she's a vampire. She runs this nightclub basically where people can come. You can volunteer yourself to supply blood to vampires. So a lot of people do this. I believe they get paid for it and stuff. It's pretty interesting. But this book actually had a nice blend of world building and character moments and a lot of smut, but I liked it a lot. I thought it was really fun, and there was like a competition in this book that we didn't really get a resolution to in this one, so I'm really itching for book 2 because I gotta know what's gonna happen. I already pre-ordered it because I'm like, I have to know what happens next. And it is a forbidden romance, which I think is kind of fun because, you know, vampire hunters should not be dating vampires in the eyes of this world. And so I just thought it was really fun. I had a great time. Like, it was a good palate cleanser read because it was just quick to fly through, and it kind of got me out of like mid-month slump that I was going through. So I would definitely recommend this one. I gave it 4 stars. I think it's really fun, and I really enjoyed this author's work so far. I mean, that's the only book I read of hers, but I'm very interested in other things that she's written so far. The next couple of books I have to talk about, I read all in a 48-hour span, which is absolutely insane. So I will link up above the reading vlog where I read all these books because I can't believe I read 4 books in 48 hours. It was wild. Actually, I think I read 3 and then I read 1 like the day after, but still, I read them all basically in 3 days, 4 days if you count outside of the readathon. It was just insane. So first up, we have Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. This is an adorable little YA rom-com in which we follow our main character. Why are names so hard for me? Celine, and she really wants to get this, I think it's a scholarship of some kind or something. Yeah, it's a 2-part survival course in the woods. And I think at the end of it, you have the opportunity to earn a scholarship for college. And lo and behold, her ex-best friend, Brad, is gonna be there, which she doesn't realize he's also going. And so I just thought this was a beautiful book on relationships in high school, like friendships, because friendships are so hard in high school. Like, I remember friendships just being so difficult in high school for me, and so I just really connected with Celine on that, and her and Brad really worked through a lot in this book with their friendship, and then it did turn more romantic, obviously, because it's a rom-com, but this was super fun. I had a great time reading it, and I gave it 4 stars. It was just a really quick little book, but it talked about a lot of great things, and I would definitely recommend it. My camera has like a little like temperature icon on. I think she's getting a little hot, but we're gonna keep going until she says that she's done. So I have not filmed like this long of a video on my new camera yet, so we'll just see. I don't know. We're just gonna keep going, and hopefully I can at least get this video done. So next up, we have An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. This is a companion book to A Dowry of Blood, which I totally loved, which I feel like is an unpopular opinion. But this is a companion book set, I believe, a long time after A Dowry of Blood. But in this book, we follow our main character, who I can never remember names, Laura, and she is attending this school called St. Perpetua's Women's College. It's this very isolated school, like very far away. And so she's attending this school, and she gets introduced to another character who I can never remember their names, Carmilla, and they have this intense academic rivalry. It's kind of like that catty, you know, kind of girls hating each other, which I don't love, but it kind of gets resolved as the book goes on. But they kind of are academic rivals to gain this professor's attention, who has a pretty toxic relationship with her students because it gets kind of romantic in some aspects. So definitely read the content warnings for this one. S.T. Gibson is great at putting content warnings in the beginnings of her books. So she has a little author's note kind of explaining what goes on in this book. So would definitely recommend checking that out if you need to, but I really enjoyed this one a lot. I read it really quickly. The audiobook was really good, and it does have vampires in it and a little bit of sapphic romance. Those two will just always get me. So I give this one 4 stars. I had a fun time with it, and I'd recommend. Next up is White Horse by Erica T. Worth. This is just a random book I picked up in the 48-hour readathon. So this book is marketed as a horror, which I would say is incorrect. I feel like it's more of a mystery story than anything because nothing in this book was horrific to me. So in this book, we follow our main character who is suffering from grief from, I think, the passing of her mother, I believe. So what's her name? Carrie, I think? So she's being haunted by visions of her mother and this mysterious creature, and her cousin Debbie finds this old family bracelet and gives it to her, and once she gets it, she just starts having weird visions and things are really strange. And so it's basically just like a journey of Carrie just kind of getting some resolution from her mother's passing. I think it's a good story. I just think it's pitched wrong as a horror book for me personally. It does have paranormal aspects to it, but I would not classify it as horror personally. But I gave this one 3 stars. I liked it well enough, and I would definitely read more by this author. Alrighty, we got 3 more books to talk about, and then we will be done. So the next book I have is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. This is a fantasy romance book that I've been really curious about since these books got republished. Like, look at this cover. It's so gorgeous. So in this book, we follow our main character Cinnamon, and her family is spice farmers. So all of her sisters and siblings have different like spice names, which I think is kind of cute. So Cinnamon, as the title suggests, gets drunk and she inadvertently saves this demon and learns from him that the god that they worship is a terrible person and is like really awful. And so he's like, hey, you need to go on this journey with me and we're gonna go take her down. And she's like, okay, cool, sounds good. So she joins him on this journey, and I just didn't love it. I feel like the logic was really lacking in this book to me. Like, at one point she has 2 horses that is like pulling the carriage that they are using or whatever, and I don't even remember what happened, but like something super ridiculous happens, and then suddenly the horses have wings and they fly away. It's like, what? It just lacked a lot of logic for me. Like, how did we get from point A to point B? Like, what the heck? So I didn't totally love this one because of that. I can suspend my disbelief quite a bit, but this one was really stretching it for me. So I ended up giving this one 2 stars. I just wasn't a fan of the characters. It felt very childish and silly to me, and maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think I'll be continuing with this one, but it was okay, but it just wasn't my favorite. Next up, I finally read Akawar, A Court of Wings and Ruin by Miss Sarah Janet, and I gave this one 3 stars. I like this one better than A Court of Mist and Fury, which I believe is an unpopular opinion, but I feel like this one had more plot to it, which I really enjoyed. That's hilarious. I just realized I have like a little sticky tab telling myself where I needed to read for that day. But anyways, so I just feel like the plot in this one was way more interesting. I feel like Akamath was just pure vibes, which is not a bad thing, but it was just very vibey book. This one definitely had much more like political things going on, a lot of more plot going on, which I really enjoyed, and the romance is interesting in this. I don't know, I really do not like the romance in Sarah Janet books, but her plots are pretty interesting, and I'm intrigued enough to finish it, but it's definitely not like a favorite series of mine. But I'm gonna push through. I have 2 more books left to read in this series, and it'll be done, and then I can finally say I've read this. I'm honestly just reading it to say I've read it at this point because I'm not loving it. I'm not hating it, but I just want to have said I read it so when people talk about it, I can vaguely know what they're talking about, you know? And the final book we have is Good Rich People by Eliza Jane Brazier. This is the book that I was excited to read because it is rich people drama, and it did deliver on that. So in this book, we follow our main character who is married to this super extremely rich guy who is very toxic. It's a very toxic relationship that she has with him. He's a terrible husband. And so he gets really bored because he has so much money. He gets bored because he can get whatever he wants. There's nothing he wants really because he has it all. So they play this game where they will get someone to come stay at their house. Like there's like an apartment that's like next to their house that they will invite someone to come stay at, and then kind of just like invite to these various games. And it's very weird. I don't want to get too far into it because it can get into spoiler territory, but it's very strange book. Like I feel like the last like 100 pages was really good, but the rest of it was just really slow and kind of boring to me. It felt like it was taking too long to build up to what was going to happen, but it was okay. I gave it 2 stars. I'm curious to read more by this author because I really enjoyed her other book, like Good Horses or something with horse in the title. I like that one a fair bit, but this one, not so much. Well, there you have it, friends. Those are all 15 books that I read in the month of March. I know I will not be reading this much in April. I am slumping just a little bit, but hopefully I can kind of bounce back and get my books read for Magical Readathon and go from there. So thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you all in another video soon. Goodbye!